Okay, hello and welcome to a long-awaited ComfyUI tutorial. Sorry I have been absent lately. The reasons for that are many, but primarily I have a whole bunch of health issues which preclude me from easily making videos and also make it difficult to work up the energy to do them. So today I'm going to be doing a video which I've kind of had in the pipeline for a while, but have not really had a chance to kind of do the actual work. And as you can see here, the tutorial is basically, it's a pretty useful one if you're making characters. We're going to be using IPAdapter to make first we make the subject art, so we're going to make a character. We're going to use IPAdapter to then modify another image so that it comes out using the same character but from another angle, which is super useful if you are trying to make character design turnarounds, or you're trying to make action kind of action sheets, or you're just trying to straight up make comics using IPAdapter. It's fairly flexible. It's not perfect. This particular image is kind of the most perfect one I've had out of about 30 attempts. To be completely honest with you, it doesn't come out this good normally. So that's actually a surprise to me when it happened. And we're going to be using, in order to do this, you're going to need an image editing program which can just make basic sketches. So you could technically use Paint for this if that's all you have, and you need to be able to make a small kind of grayscale image, and that is really the only output in terms of effort you're going to need, is going to be the ability to make this kind of thing. And I'll explain why it is structured in the way it is in a bit when I get to this part of it. I'm not going to build this one step by step because I simply don't have the energy to talk the whole time while I do it. So I'm going to just kind of go through the pre-constructed setup so that you have an idea of what is going on. So first of all, you design your character and you might have sketched it or whatever, but you need to have a prompt which is all about how your character looks. So if we look at this prompt here, you see I've got it set up so it's a portrait. It's got kind of some stuff about the style of art I'm using. I'm basing it on the character Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop. I've got it's a shaggy dark-haired man wearing a prison jumpsuit. The jumpsuit being important for the character. It's a little bit easier on the turnaround if it's something simple that can't be messed up. So if you said they've got a scarf, it can come out 6 different ways, but if they're just wearing something simple, it's a lot easier. I'm giving it the kind of atmospheric, worn, sad, depressed and stuff. I'm giving it a second art style with Sumo Nehi. I think that's how you say it. Apologies if I have butchered it, Japanese people. But anyway, so the style is kind of based on this manga called Blame in a way, and it's an amazing manga. It's really good. It's just about kind of liminal spaces, architectural designs, and kind of dark future sci-fi stuff. So it looks pretty cool. So I'm using that. We've got sketchy high contrast black and white, architectural liminal sci-fi and stuff. Now I'm not copying this artist specifically, I'm copying the style, and because the models are the way they are, you can't get stuff that really looks perfectly, and especially not for an artist that's not so mainstream. It weights things in a certain way, but it doesn't hugely assist in terms of making, say, the kind of stuff that the artist can actually make, which is kind of sad for me because I really like his art. Anyway, so architectural, liminal, sci-fi, industrial, lonely, sketchy, and so on. And that's kind of some stuff for the background of the image. And I also have these two here, which are triggers for LoRa keywords, because you want them in there if you're running LoRa, just to make sure that it triggers, because sometimes they won't if you don't have the keywords. And obviously I have a negative prompt over here. Cough, cough my lungs out. Now, other than the prompts, we're going to be using some kind of method of setting an empty latent size. So I'm using CR aspect ratio, which is a ComfyUI node. It's very powerful. You can set aspect ratios. You can set it to custom mode and then set your own direct pixel ratios if you want. You can just flick this and it'll change width and height around. You can change the upscale and it will just times the output by that amount. And you set batch as well, which is it's really good. I'm using a custom VE because sometimes VE on these models is a bit broken, and this just gets rid of the issues of having some distortions when you output images occasionally. Sorry, I'm going to be coughing a bit. So, now I also have over here, we have this thing called a LoRa stack. Now a LoRa stack is just a more compact way of applying LoRa's to ComfyUI. Normally you'd be applying a LoRa loader and you would have several in a series and each one would have a model loader applied to it. And this way we have just one, and you can have up to 3 different LoRa's stacked, and you can plug in more onto that. I don't know why you would have more than 3. I don't even know why you would have more than 1, to be honest, most of the time. Now the advantage of the LoRa stack is you can modify the weights and stuff in relation to each other, which makes it a little bit easy to tune with. Plus they're all in one spot instead of being scattered everywhere. So it's super useful. Let's just tell that to leave me alone. I've been clicking X on that for several days now. It won't leave me be. All right. Now, I am using Mara Scott's awesome Anybus nodes. It's taken a while, but now these things are pretty effective, and I've only had them bug out a few times over the course of its development, but now it is pretty stable. So they're pretty good. You can still bug them out occasionally. I'm not exactly sure how you do it. It just has happened sometimes. But the strengths outweigh the bad stuff in that I can pass prompts and everything else through this. And I can just add more inputs if I need them to as well, which is cool. Now I connect these buses to each other, so I don't have to connect 900 different little wires to things. I can just have to connect one. And over here we have our sampler control net setup. So it's plugged in all into this Anybus node here. We have a clip text over here. Now the reason I have clip text in this sampler group instead of over here in the loading section is because if it is over here and I decide I want to just copy all this and like put another one next to it, I can replace the text inputs if I want and have different prompts in each one of these kind of samplers if I want. It's kind of a time saver if you decide to do stuff. You don't have to go back to the start and change that. It's way easier if you just plan ahead, basically. So that's there. Now we have upscale image over here, and this is plugged into the values from this aspect ratio node because we want the pixel sizes coming out of this so that we can resize any image we bring into the workflow using the exact same size as our empty latent is using. It stops any kind of resizing issues and stops us entering manual numbers into things that we don't have to. So that's what that's for. There's also a load image attached to it, and we have the load image because this upscale thing image here is being passed through the control net, and the control net is also grabbing the prompt and running it through into the sampler. So if we see this kind of section here is entirely devoted to control net. It's not actually using any of this to generate images. It's not using this fan code or anything like that. This is all specifically just to bring in this image here and use it in this control net section here. The end output being this particular line drawing. Now, sampler settings are pretty simple. I'm just using denoise of 1, Keras, CFG 7, 30 steps. It doesn't matter what you use, you will find your own The only thing is you probably want to make sure leave me alone. The denoise is 1. Unless you're basing it on another image, you'll want denoise as 1. Okay. Now. If we go up here, let's have a look at the IPAdapter kind of thing, and you'll see that it's actually placed between the LoRa stack and this Anybus, and that is because it's basically, it modifies the information sent through the model. So this method applies to the model that you're using rather than applying to the conditioning. Like ControlNet applies to conditioning, these orange lines, and IPAdapters modify the purple model lines instead. And when you combine the two, you can use it to modify the output during the sampling process in such a way that you can basically kind of tell it what you want a person to look like, or what you want an art style to be, those kind of things. It gives you a whole bunch more control. So the first thing you want to do is you want to have a character, obviously. You could download one, you could use an existing person, you could do anything. But most importantly, it must mirror the content of what is in your prompt. If this prompt is completely different to your character, you are going to have problems getting a decent output. So if you're going to do this, I would advise to actually generate your character using a prompt and then use the same prompt in here. Now, where are we? So in order to set up IPAdapter, it's pretty simple. You need an image load, and the image, generally it wants to use a square image here, but if your image is non-square, it will automatically try to crop things to fit a certain way. So it's usually fine, but be aware if your character is off to the side of an image, you're going to have problems. If it's over here somewhere, you might not be able to do what you're after. So try to have your character centrally located with space around them. You want your background to kind of be probably generic or as simple as possible, to reduce any issues that might arise, or at the very least have them kind of similarly themed to each other. And the input source should be similar to what you want as an output as well. Where are we? So in order to plug up the IPAdapter properly, it's kind of complicated. These models here, which go into these IPAdapter loaders and the load clip vision thing here, are kind of important. You also want to make sure that they are IPAdapter Plus, and that if you have the other versions, that you're using the correct IPAdapter Plus for both nodes, because you do not want to be in a situation where you have standard IPAdapter and then IPAdapter Plus, because it will throw errors and you will be confused. So keep them the same. Where possible, make sure that the models are compatible, and it doesn't warn you if they're not compatible. It just won't work properly. So I can't really tell you exactly which ones work with which ones. All I know is that the VidH 1.5 SD works with the VidH SDXL plus face model. For whatever reason, these two models here work, and I downloaded them through the same GitHub page as IPAdapter Advanced comes from. So yes, these can be a problem. I would get all of them if I was you, and then click through them to find the right one that works for you and your model that you're using. But yeah, if they don't match and they're not kind of the right for the model you're using to generate everything, it's gonna either not work, or it's gonna work strangely, or it's gonna be broken in some way. Now, these settings are not massively important. The weight is the most important one, and that is how much strength this node is going to apply to the model kind of throughput phase. So it comes through here. This is like a filter that's being applied, and this is applying at about 20%. A 20% work effort into the process, basically. These things change various settings, like the way that it modifies the signals and such. I'm just staying basic because it saves me messing around, seeing as these settings work. Now, start at and end at in any kind of node usually means it's based on how many steps are being processed by a sampler. So if you had 100 steps and this was at 10 and then this one was at 50, it would mean it would start at step 10 and then end at step 50. Which means that you're giving it a little bit of time to generate whatever it wants by itself, and then you engage this tuning, and then it does a whole bunch of stuff, and then at 50 you go, okay, stop, and it finalizes the image using basically whatever it was originally going to use. And because we want kind of this to be a bit stricter, we're starting it at 0 and ending it at 79%. Which means it does have some time to do its own thing, which gives it a little bit more freedom when it comes to inputs and outputs, and it doesn't try to trace this image every single time if we use these kind of settings. If they're too high or they're on one, and it'll try to copy this exactly, but the lower these numbers are, generally speaking, it should be a bit free. It'll free it up to do what it wants to do, basically. Yeah, so these are the things you need. You need these two little kind of nodes here plugged into IPAdapter Plus to make it run. It will not run without these. You need to make sure that they're plugged in correctly, and it has a source image. I'm not going to go into what image negative does because, in all honesty, I have no idea. But yes, so this works. All right, so then it goes through any bus, obviously, and into here. Now, because this kind of influence is happening on this sampler by default, we need a way of controlling how it applies it. Otherwise, every time it's going to try to basically do the same image. It'll try and do a front-on image like that every time, unless we're applying something to tell it not to do that. Now, you could try that with prompt. It's not going to work very well. But if you use ControlNet, you can kind of override some of its base kind of assumptions about what the image should be. And in order to do that, I've got a relatively high strength ControlNet being applied. I'm using it's an SDXL Canny model. These models are for SDXL are kind of they're a bit finicky. They unless they receive the perfect kind of the perfect kind of pre-made image input into it, it will apply oddly, and sometimes certain models it just won't work with. So it's good to have a few different options for these, but I'm using one that generally works relatively well. It does require, however, that I have this Canny image processing set up. In order to make the image I need one which just has these kind of lines, like a simple line, and it just wants pixelated lines. It doesn't want texture, it doesn't want color, it doesn't want grayscale, it just wants these things in. So in order to get that, we're loading this image, and this image here it's grayscale, and the grayscale is in different tones when they're next to each other. It's not really about height, it's not really about anything other than providing a difference between one color and another to provide an interface line. So see these lines here? They are well defined when you try and make lines out of this, because they have a different kind of color in each. So this is different, this is different, this is different, these are different, and each of them, when next to each other, you can change them. As long as the interface lines are all right, it should work when you run it through Canny, and you'll see over here, it's put a line wherever the line is. Now, the reason I do it this way is if you try to draw lines, if you look at the zipper here, this is where the zipper thing is. These are like the kind of things you might draw if you were scribbling stuff in Paint or whatever. And if you look over here, you'll see it's outlined the lines instead of putting like a line there. So that's what that solves, because you can't just draw it as one pixel. It will just not listen to you. So yeah, this is just the easiest way to get this to kind of happen. And what I've done is I've just made a side-on profile, essentially, with roughly the shape I'm after. And when it runs this, and it says it wants to make the face and stuff using this shape. And ControlNet is basically designed to influence the output using this kind of tracery of stuff that comes in through here. So I'll click go. It's going to try to generate. If we watch over here, we'll see what it actually does from the earlier steps. And come on, buffer. There we go. And we'll see this kind of very soft outline kind of appearing as we look at it. And that's kind of what it's telling it to do. And each step it's checking back to this ControlNet and saying, where are my edges? And then it's checking the model and saying, what does it need to look like? And it's going, okay. And then it's running through the prompt. And it runs this over and over again using this method. Now, if I took ControlNet off, it would probably have them facing forwards because that's what it wants to do. But the end result is it's producing characters that are roughly the same as whatever your source image is. So if we compare them, they've got the same kind of zipper thing going on, same rough kind of design going on around here. Face, it looks close enough that if you look at it, yes, it looks like the same person. And that's kind of the important part of it. It's not going to get perfect details on bits and pieces on the face, but it's going to get the general look about right, and that's where we want to be. Anything else, like a scar or something, is stuff that you would probably add in manually if you were really needing it to be like that for the character. Like if you had a scratch here or something like that, it's something that you would do yourself. Now I'm just gonna, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run a bypass on this. So if we bypass this node, it should just run with the prompt while ignoring these. So if I run it, hopefully it doesn't throw errors. And you'll see what it would be doing without the ControlNet being applied to it. And as you can see, it's trying to make a front-on image. It's not necessarily going to copy it exactly from the this source image. As we can see, it is different. But it's got a fair bit more differences, and it doesn't necessarily look like the same person. Well, it is kind of the same person, but you can see the clothes are different and stuff like that. And plus, you have no control over where he's facing, which is not really what you're after. Now, this process can apply to full characters standing up. This can apply to them in action poses. It can apply to them doing things and all that kind of stuff. There are, of course, the standard issues of characters who are too far away from your point of view are going to be messed up. The eyes won't work. The faces will be kind of messed. The closer to the camera, the more close-ups you get, the better it's going to be. It's kind of one of the limitations we work with, unfortunately. So anyway, that is how you would be using IPAdapter and ControlNet to turn a dude's face so that you could do a side-on view of your character. Hopefully this has helped you out. Now, I can't make videos as often as I would like to because of health issues, but I do have a Discord where I am relatively active and I do answer questions. Even though I can't necessarily make videos all the time, I'm still around, and there's also a whole bunch of other people who are very skilled on my Discord who are doing the same stuff. There are people who make nodes, people who program. There's even a programming section in there. There's like competition. There's a competition, kind of a bad competition that I've been doing occasionally. And image sharing as well. It's just, if you want to kind of avail yourself of the community, then it's there if you want it. So hopefully you find this video and that kind of Discord helpful. Anyway, so thank you for watching. Go make some cool stuff.